Great. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Amy O'Hara, the president of the Association of Public Data Users. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for a digital security checkup, because you never know who's watching. We are delighted to welcome Jared. I'm going to let him introduce himself, give a brief bio, and jump right in to these tips to help you in your everyday life in these trying times. Jared, handing it over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Marcotte. I'm the president of the Turnout. We are a digital consultancy that is based out of Silver Spring, Maryland. I started my career as a software engineer at IBM. I've worked through startups. I worked through a project between the Pew Charitable Trust and Google on trying to get public data information around elections and make it more available to anyone who wants to vote. And from Pew, I ended up leaving and starting Turnout in 2015. And so we've been helping nonprofits and governments understand the processes that are within their offices and ensure that they are working within the constraints of the statutes in their state and trying to find efficiencies, make their work better. One of the projects we also work on is with the Center for Internet Security on a project called RabbitV, which looks at non-voting election equipment, things like e-poll books, voter registration systems, and ensuring that they stay secure to the best of our knowledge. We do that by looking at the organization that develops the product. We look at the architecture of the product itself, and we look at whether or not it'll stand up to point-in-time testing in the security environment today. In doing a lot of this work, I have come across and I've gained an understanding of what the landscape of cybersecurity looks at. I will not call myself a cybersecurity expert, but I will say that I can possibly help give you a digital security 101 that will get you so far until I could probably recommend a cybersecurity expert for you to really talk to. So let's talk about the threat landscape. I think for most people, it really comes down to three main categories of threats. There's phishing, there's malware, subcategory of that is ransomware and social engineering. I'm pretty sure that almost everyone here has probably come across a situation where they've received an email that looks like it's from a bank, it looks like it's from a service they use, but it looks odd. You may look at it and say, I don't remember my bank having that bad of a grasp of the English language, but this is fascinating. There might be a link in there that would bring you to a website that looks very much like your bank. And if you were to enter your information into it, what you'd probably be doing is sending your credentials to your actual bank account to someone who will then log in for you and potentially send themselves money, gain more information about your accounts, lots of bad things. So the other thing that a phishing email could do is bring you onto a site that would install software on your computer called malware. And malware is simply I don't usually use the word portmanteau, but I'm going to use it in this conversation, of the two words malicious and software. So if it can run, it can cause all kinds of harm to your device. It could be locked or unusable. It could encrypt the data on it, which makes it inaccessible. It could take control of your device in some way, either resulting in an attack against an organization or somebody else, or it could start logging information from your computer, like your keystrokes. Lots of really unfortunate and terrible things. But one specific category of it is ransomware. So going back to the idea that it could lock down your device or lock the data on it, that's essentially what ransomware does. The other end of it, though, is you will then get a request for money. And the idea is that if you pay that money, they'll tell you that they'll unlock your computer. The problem with that is that most law enforcement will tell you, do not pay anybody to unlock your computer for if it comes out of ransomware. The reason for that is one, you're sending money to potentially a criminal or a criminal organization, which of course gives them additional finances to then go and do this to someone else. Two, there's no guarantee that once you pay the money that they will actually unlock your computer. And three, it makes you more likely to be targeted again, because if you paid once, you will probably pay again in the future. So you have to be very careful about um, how you mitigate some of these issues. The last piece is social engineering. This is an interesting one. It's essentially using psychological manipulation to get access to services, passwords, accounts. And that is fairly low tech, really. One of the most interesting examples is a customer service representative at a mobile phone company getting a call from a stressed out spouse saying that they can't access their account, that they have a crying baby in the background that can be heard over the call. They can't get access to the account. They don't have access to the original email address. And if you could just please send an updated uh, password reset link to this new email address that I'll give you. Empathy kicks in. The CSR sends out a password reset link, unfortunately not to a spouse who is not stressed out with a crying baby, which was just a recording in the background, but it is to an attacker to take over that account. So to give you a case study, back in 2020, I'm not sure if you saw this, but a lot of prominent accounts, Apple, Uber, Joe Biden, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Floyd Mayweather, all tweeted out a scam that the Bitcoin paid into an online wallet would be doubled and returned. Fantastic, right? Sounds too good to be true, because it is. So 320 transactions took place, and that wallet ended up with the value of about $110,000. And the attackers that uh, did this also acquired the full message history from 8 non-verified accounts that they took over during the course of the incident. How they went about it is also fascinating. So the attackers scraped LinkedIn for employees with admin privileges. They then paid LinkedIn to get access to tools that are usually made for job recruiters. So they obtained cell phone and numbers, private contact information for these Twitter employees. They then called the employees pretending to be Twitter personnel. And then they directed the employees to log in to a fake internal Twitter VPN to steal their credentials. And essentially, what the fake Twitter VPN was is something that looked like the Twitter VPN, very much like the ThankBake website. Those folks typed in their credentials, and in the back end, the attackers then typed it into the real VPN, allowing them to get access. And those admin tools could bypass any security that the Twitter users had already put into their accounts. So that is one really good example of doing how much work goes into performing a hack, and how much both social engineering and uh, the development work to ensure that you have this facade of like what looks like your actual job being set up beforehand, where it's all being puppeteered in the background. So let's move into some digital security tips. A friend of mine, wonderful cybersecurity expert named Josh Franklin, who used to work for NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, has started to develop what he calls the personal cybersecurity framework. And it really has 5 steps. It's identifying your digital footprint. Doing that initial audit is always one of the best things you can do pretty much for any project. Figure out ways to protect yourself, which is what we'll talk about next. Detect signs of compromise. Respond if something happens, and recover. I'm not going to touch on the recovery today because really that is something that if you need to recover, that is really law enforcement, that is a cybersecurity expert, that is not my area of expertise. I can give you some tips on the response part and some tips on the detection part, but we're going to primarily focus on protection. So let's talk about the basics. Account security, ensuring that you have strong passwords. If there's anything, and I will probably say this more than once today, if I can walk away from this meeting inspiring you to use password managers, I have done my job. And multi-factor authentication. Actually, I would say those are probably tied for first place in my head if I can get you to do either of those things. We'll talk a little bit about device security, and then we'll talk about safe browsing and, God help us, social media. So account security, using strong passwords. Use a password manager, change passwords when needed or required, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And multi-factor authentication. You may have heard the term that's probably more prevalent out there is two-factor authentication, where you have one additional means of signing into your account. That's just a subset of multi-factor authentication. It can be 2 or more. So a little bit about passwords first. There are times where you want to log into a site and you actually have a really good password you want to use, and sometimes you are prevented from using it. And that tends to be because there are legacy systems out there. There are sometimes old password standards that may have been accepted at one point, but are really not the standard now. And let's be honest, there's a lot of poor design out there on the internet. And there are so many accounts to manage. However, every password should be unique. I didn't write this on the slide, but the other thing is that you should not know what your passwords are. And that's why I say password managers. It's one of the greatest actions you can take to improve your security, seriously. It encourages a lot of the best practices by design, and it judges you. I will give you an example. So I want to create a new login for a website. I know the URL. I am forced to use my email address, so that's what's up there. There is a password requirement. I did not create any of these passwords. I clicked on the password field, and my password manager says, here's a password you can use. And you can essentially just adjust the sliders and hit whatever knobs and dials you need in order to meet the requirements of the password requirements for that site. So if you can't use symbols, you turn off the symbol switch. If you can't use spaces, then you can switch to hyphens. But this is one way that you can create passwords that you don't have to remember. Your password manager is doing it for you. More than that, like I said, it judges you. So based on the number of passwords you have in your password manager, and my password manager is 1Password. No, I'm not necessarily sponsoring 1Password. No one's paying me money to be here, but I am going to tell you from my perspective, it's the one I use. I think they're a very good company, and they have to this day not been subject of a breach that has, as far as we know, as far as I know, not been subject of a breach that has leaked any of the user data. So it looks at my data and says, this is your score, which is fantastic. And when I say change passwords if necessary, you may end up on a system that says every 90 days you have to change your password. If you have to, you have to. but you don't have to change your passwords all the time. There's really two main reasons for doing so. The system requires a password change every 90 days, every 30 days, every 60 days, whatever it happens to be. And if that makes that system feel safe and secure, great. You're storing your passwords in your password manager. You don't have to create them. You don't have to know what they are. So if they want you to change your password every 60 days, fine. It's a little bit of time pain, but it's generally okay. The other reason is if the account you control was in a breach or compromised. And the nice thing about password managers like 1Password is that they will check. 1Password specifically has something called Watchtower, and Watchtower looks at your passwords. It also securely checks this website called Have I Been Pwned, which essentially records whether or not a account or email address that you have has been in a major breach. And so you will know if your passwords have been breached. They will tell you. More than that, within the password manager, they'll also tell you for this website that's in here, two-factor authentication is available. So you can go on the site and set it up. So that brings us to multi-factor authentication. And what that is that two or more methods of verification to access a system, application, or account. You might have heard this before. It's something you know, your password, and something you have. In some cases, your smartphone or a security token. It also could be something that you are, your biometrics. So if you log into a particular site, they may say, we're going to send you a text message, and that will then get you through that second step. That's your two-factor authentication. It's more than just your username and password. They now have to send something to a device you own that's not the same computer you're dialing into over a different method of communication in order to get into the site. So here are the benefits of that. So it provides you multiple verification methods. If your password gets breached in some public way, the two-factor authentication would prevent an attacker from using those credentials and logging in as you, because it would then send a message to your phone, or they would need that other security token to then log into that account, which they wouldn't have. It wouldn't be a part of the breach. So it protects against that password theft. Also, in a lot of cases, any site that has MFA has real-time alerts. So if they detect you logging in from a location that seems odd for you to be in, you will get an email saying, it looks like there was an attempt to get into your account, and the MFA token was wrong, or it wasn't used, or was in a location that they don't recognize. And more than that, all of these things are just a layered defense. It's not just your username and password. It's also your additional device. It's your biometrics. Every single step there is an obstacle that another attacker has to get over in order to get into your account. So the more credentials that you supply, the more likely it'll be that your account will remain secure even in case of breach. So let's talk a little bit about device security. This is a tough one because it's hard to just talk about. What is a device? It's essentially anything that you own that could connect to a network that you control. It could be a laptop, it could be a desktop, it could be a cell phone, it could be a Wi-Fi router, an Internet of Things device. If you are familiar with that term, those would be like your Roomba, your Nest thermostat. Any of those things is a device. So if you want to ensure your devices are secure, and I should be careful about using the word ensure. If you want to try to mitigate the most risks for compromise, enable your existing device's security features. So this is locks on your phone. Make sure they're as complicated as they can be without making it so difficult for you to log into. Keep your devices up to date. Latest security patches that come in for your operating system, whether they're on your phone or whether they're on your computer. You also have to think about network security. Every device on your network should be secured to protect the other devices on your network. If one gets compromised, there is a good chance that compromise will spread. That's why they call them viruses. They do move from one to another. Also, when I say use the full capabilities of your router's security, I mean making sure that the way that you configure your router, you're not using the defaults, unless we're talking about the security of the password. Usually, the security of the password, those defaults are usually up to date. You may see something called like WPA3 that has to do with the encryption of your network, and the devices that are connected to it are encrypted as they're connecting to your network so that the communication is secure. You shouldn't use anything less than that. Don't use the default um, router name. Don't use the default network name. Make sure you change those. Make sure you change the passwords on your network. Also, getting into this other piece called segmenting your network. What you might be familiar with is you've got a new Verizon router, and one part of it is, oh, this is your general network, but then there's also this thing called a guest network. That is what's called a virtual local area network. So if you think about these things as two different streams of information, one side you want to keep with just the devices that you control and trust. Let's say your laptop, your cell phone, and your basically anybody else's device in your house that you know that you could actually get a hold of and update when you need to, versus the devices that you probably shouldn't trust. This might be your smart TV. This might be your Roomba. Maybe people really like the Roomba and they want to trust the Roomba. I would say don't trust your Roomba. Um, put those on the guest network. And essentially what that does is it firewalls the two different devices from each other. So if something infects your Roomba, it's not going to be able to jump to your laptop. It's not going to be able to jump to your phone. So that's what I mean by saying segment your network. Keep one set of devices on one side, keep all of your trusted at most, trusted as much as you can, devices on the other part of your network. And if you can install antivirus software on any device that can have antivirus software on it, that's usually your laptops and desktops. There's not much more than that, unfortunately. Safe browsing. This one's a tough one. Again, a lot of it goes back to device security. Keep your devices updated. Look for or force HTTPS on all sites. If you're not sure what HTTPS is, it's essentially the secure side of the browsing ecosystem. So there was an older standard HTTP. The S is just added security. So it basically means that the communication that you have with your browser and that other website is being secured between the connection. And really what it comes down to is look for the lock. In the corner of your browser, you should look for a little lock that says, for whoever you're trying to connect to on this website, at least the communication is secure. So you want to make sure that there are locks on uh, when you're booking your airlines, where you're going to do your banking. You want to make sure that the only people that could possibly view the communication you're doing, there's nobody in the middle. There nobody could be in the middle. That it's being encrypted from your browser to your bank server, your airline server, so on and so forth. Public Wi-Fi, just don't. If you can avoid it, just don't. Um, it's not secure. Uh, like we just talked about with routers, there is typically a password that you have to put into to get onto your router. And that is the thing that secures the connection between you and the router. Public Wi-Fi, there's none, usually nothing, which means everything you're doing could potentially be in the clear. Someone could essentially figure out the websites you're going to, could build a profile on you. If you're a high value target, that's a terrible thing. If you do need to connect to public Wi-Fi, again, going back to just don't, if you can avoid it, use a VPN. And that's virtual private network. We won't cover how to set up a VPN in this talk, but it isn't. It's becoming easier. You just have to find a reputable VPN service provider. Usually, there are apps that you can put on your phone, you can put on your computer, and it will essentially disguise your connection to all of the browsing that you're doing, all of the connections that your computer is making to look like it's only going through one particular place, the VPN provider. So it disguises a lot of the work you're doing on your computer. This is an interesting one. When creating accounts, lie. So when you're being asked to provide the name of your eighth grade teacher, if you're being asked to, what was the first car you drove, those are not legal requirements to provide to a website. There are ways in which you can reset your account if you need to. So never tell the truth. Because those pieces of information also get leaked. So if they're left out there in the clear, there could be an attacker that goes in and says, I can't figure out how to get into my account. They'll be asked one of those questions. You don't want the information that's being put that you're putting on one site to be used to potentially get into another site. So again, lie and store all of this information in your password manager, which hopefully you will get. So again, just never tell the truth in those things. Um, don't click on suspicious links. Again, this is if you're in your webmail, if you didn't expect an email to come in, or if you didn't expect a Dropbox notification, and anything that is unexpected that shows up in your regular browsing, just don't click on it. Make sure that if you're being asked to go to your bank to do something, reset information, then go to your bank directly. Don't rely on the email to get you there. And again, be very careful with downloads. Anytime somebody says you need to download something to reset an account, likely never the case. I can't honestly think of one right now where you would need to do that. Um, and so if you didn't ask for a download, if you didn't initiate that download, just be careful about the download. And when you're done on whatever account you're working on online, log out. If somebody takes your device and you have a session open, because your browser likes to be helpful, it won't necessarily clear out a connection that you've made with your bank or with your social media accounts. You could reopen an old window and be left open with your Facebook account or your banking account that hasn't timed out yet. So if you're done banking, if you're finished with your Facebook account, then just close it out, log out. You can connect back in later if you need to. Social media, maybe just don't. Um, I know that's not always an option. We still, and of course, this is coming from somebody who does have social media accounts. Sometimes it's necessary for business. Sometimes it's necessary to keep up with family. That's the only place that they update anybody on what's going on. So what I would say with that is multi-factor authentication, all the things. Make sure that there isn't just a username and password between you and getting into the account. I would really limit who can see your profile and what you post. Also, be careful with what you post. Even innocuous things can reveal information about you. It could be the cafes you like to go to that are nearby your house. It could be the outside of your house. It could be your street names. All of these things, if you are somebody in which a attacker is interested in going back to the Twitter hack, anything that they can use to build that profile on you is they're going to look for it. So just be careful. And more than that, sometimes leaks are a friend potentially taking a picture that they liked, downloading it, sharing it with a friend off Facebook. Hacks can happen that way, or leaks can happen that way. So you should just be very careful um, about what you post on there. Just really limit the range of your posts. Make sure it really can't extend beyond the folks that you trust with that information, and hopefully they understand what your concern is or your sense of security is. So let's get quickly into detecting and responding. Now that you know what can happen, what if it does? First thing to do is recognize the signs. There could be some unexplained account activity. Sometimes the emails you get in are not from unreputable sources. Sometimes they really are from your bank saying, there's something odd happening here. So you might get emails with notifications. There might be credit report alerts, and there could be MFA alerts. So all of those things might lead you to believe that either you are part of a hack, you're being targeted, and from there, you need to figure out what to do. And so this goes into now that you know, what do you do? Change passwords. And hopefully your password manager has alerted you if you happen to be part of a breach. You should be able to figure out which passwords you'll need to change. They'll also tell you which passwords are the same from site to site. So you'll know that if you need to change one and you reused it somewhere else, you'll want to change all of those. Once you gain access to accounts, in case you've been locked out, you'll want to definitely put on multi-factor authentication if it wasn't there to begin with. You should also monitor your accounts at that point, both your online accounts and your personal accounts. So get your credit reports, make sure you're checking to see if there's any unauthorized information that's on there, things that you don't recognize. And consider it a credit freeze if you haven't frozen your credit already. It's probably not a bad idea to do because of the Experian hack that happened back in 2017. 147 million records in that hack got leaked. Probably somebody on this call, if not everybody on this call, was probably affected by it. Um, a credit freeze, and I believe if you ask one agency to put a freeze on, or ask or report that there was an event in your credit, I believe there is a duty for them to report it to the other two credit agencies. There may be somebody on the call that maybe correct me on that point, but I believe that that is the case. So at that point, you got to notify affected parties, banks, credit cards, anybody who you're going to want to know that if it turns out that your credit cards were stolen, your bank account information's out there, let folks know. Report the incident. uh, to the affected parties, to law enforcement. Consult a cybersecurity professional if you feel that it is warranted, and then review your security practices if you can determine what went wrong. So going back to the personal cybersecurity framework, identify your digital footprint, protect yourself, detect the signs of compromise, respond, and then recover. And with that, I will end there and say thank you to everyone for listening to all of this happy information about cybersecurity. And I'm willing to open it up for questions.
That's great. Thanks, Jared. We're actually going to stop the recording here so that we can have a candid discussion during Q&A. There are a couple